All right. Hello, everyone. It's 1 Mountain Time. So, yeah, let's kick off this project. Um, Viewing party. So, essentially, what you're going to be building is an app that will allow you to kind of like consume movies and movie data from a specific movies API. And then with that data, you will be creating a viewing party event for you and then a number of your friends to watch together. And yeah, you're going to need to be logged in as a specific user so that that specific user um, is kind of seeing the viewing parties that they're invited to or that they've created. Um, yeah, that's the gist. Before we go any further, I just want to kind of give you a heads up of like how the next 2 hours, really 3 hours, is going to go. So I'm going to walk through some of this project and like kind of like a basic overview. And then what I'm going to do is however much time we have left from when I finish that until 3, which is the database planning portion. I'm gonna like let you all go off and like look at this on your own and basically give you a chance. This is a pair project, so there's not going to be a ton of alone time, but it's really that's a chance for you to like look at all of this on your own. Like think about the questions that you have, maybe about like how you're going to approach this project, thinking about like what you're going to ask for in your DTR and like what your learning goals are going to be, advocating for yourself there. And really just a chance for you to kind of like get your thoughts together on your own. I think that that's like a helpful part of the learning process. Um, cool. And then, yeah, the database planning, what's going to happen there is like we're going to come back together probably like either at 3 or like 10 minutes before 3, depending on how the time shakes out. And then I'll answer some questions, like whatever has come up in that kind of self exploration time. And then I'm going to drop your pairs so that you can see who you're paired up with. And then what we're going to do with the database planning section is I'll put y'all into breakout rooms with your pairs, and then Meg and I will kind of like be around to help out and like answer questions with the database planning. But really, it's just like a chance for you all to like try to get a foundation of like what your database is going to look like and what tables you might need, what information you might store. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate. Obviously, this is going to be your first draft of it. But we like I said in the kickoff or the mod intro, it's kind of like the more time that you spend planning for these projects, I think the better off your implementation is going to be. So what I would recommend is like today is like all planning basically for you and your pair, planning how we're going to work together, how we're going to organize our user stories, how we're going to organize our database, all of that. Yeah, cool. Any questions so far about how that's going to go? Okay. Yeah, things I want to talk about. Yeah, so we've got like some learning goals here we've got some explicit and then some implicit. So for explicit, it's kind of like the things that we like three on a 3, 2, 1 scale of stars, and they're kind of listed here. And it's like, hey, the 3 stars, it's like we need you to have like a full understanding of this concept. Like this is one of the core components of the project and one of the core learning goals. A 2 is kind of like, yeah, you should like be familiar with it. You feel like okay about it, but like you might still have questions. And then a 1 is like, okay, like I have to reference the docs every time I like go and do this. and that's okay. Like, and we just kind of want to like give you that scale so you could know like where to be focusing the majority of your time. So based on these, it's these top two learning goals here. Consuming an API that's going to require you to authenticate as part of the consumption process, and then using basic authentication to have build into your app and give that app some specific functionality to specific users. um, cool. I think the next thing I want to show you is the project board. All right. Can everyone see that? Okay. And now I've got like dark mode on, and I don't know how big it's showing up for y'all. Just maybe give me a thumbs up if you can, or if you want me to zoom, let me know. Okay. Yeah, so the way this is going to work is we're going to use conveyor belt to basically clone this project and give you a clone of the project board, and a place to get started basically. So you've got these to-do cards, and these kind of like make up your core like user story functionality here. And then you've got exploration options for like basically once you get this, like we'll think of this as like an MVP over here on the right. Once all of these are done, then on the left, there's some like options for you to kind of like implement things, and work. It really gives you a chance to like work on some part of this that you think is most interesting or most useful for you all as a pair. And this actually doesn't have to like, this could be very much like, hey, okay, we together we got our core functionality, and then separately we want to explore different topics. Or you could be like, no, we both want to explore the same one. That's up to you all. But if I click on like one of these, I think I'm going to click on the welcome page. So it's written pretty straightforward, how you've probably seen user stories in the past. It's like, hey, when I go and do this, I see this on my root page. And yeah, that's kind of like the gist of that. Some of these are labeled chores, and like a chore is kind of like something in the agile workflow process. It's not like really like core functionality to the user story, but it's like something that like we as developers, or maybe as a development team, like need to do as part of our process. But it's not going to get like full allotment of the team's like sprint planning time, is kind of like how it works in general, how I've seen it work. And so we have a couple of chores that are like here, like, hey, we need to set up Travis CI, we need to set up RuboCop, we need to deploy to Heroku, like earlier than rather than later. And like these are things we have to do, but they're not like core functionality user stories. Cool. The other thing I wanted to talk about with these is this like solo spike. So like for this user story, the idea here is that you would go and look at this user story, and then each person in the pair would spend some time, like time box this to like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. That's kind of up to y'all to decide. But like to go and like explore the pattern that you might use to accomplish this functionality, and um, do that before you start any like implementation. So those will be labeled with solo spike first. This paired commit, this is like another label that's on here. Not actually gonna worry too much about this. So I'm gonna give y'all like the option to do this if you would like, but it's not like gonna be required in this project as it has been in the past. Basically, what a paired commit does is it allows both collaborators to get credit for all of the code within one specific commit. All right. And there's like a way that you set that up, and like a way that like you go about doing that. And what it does really is it makes the contribution graph look a bit more even, based on these like bigger commits that like maybe are a ton of like lines of code, but they're not actually like you didn't spend a ton of time on them. It's more like configuration stuff. So I think like for that, what I'll say is it's like optional. If you're like, hey, I want to look into this paired commit stuff, then you can message Meg and I will give you like the required information, the kind of like getting started gist, and then what your co-authored commit ID is basically. And I have that information. I can give it to you. If you're not concerned about that, then know that I am not either. I'm not going to be like someone that's like constantly checking the contributions and like making that a big part of how I like, go about kind of judging your contributions to the project. I think usually the way that pair projects work is we know if someone's not able to contribute an equal amount, and that's just how it ends up shaking out. Cool. Any questions so far? Just want to make sure I'm pausing enough to give you all a chance to jump in if you have something. All right. Nothing yet. Yeah, these, I mean, y'all are going to have these project boards cloned. And so you'll get all of these like labels here. But obviously, once you clone the project and you have your own project board, we're going to ask you to kind of like go about organizing this on your own and like kind of choosing the way that you all want to like label things, like whether you're assigning tasks to one another or like assigning them priority. These are going to be like things that we're going to want you all to do. What else? Yeah, so wireframes. So if I go back here to the requirements, and then yeah, so this wireframes link here in requirements, this is like meant to be like a guide for you to look at what this could look like, right? To give you like a visual representation of like, hey, this is what the welcome page could look like. This is what the registration page could look like. It's not set in stone, and like we want you to kind of like make it look however you want. Like I don't like styling isn't really a huge component of this project, and it's not even in the learning goals. So I don't want you to, spend too much time on that up front. If that becomes one of your like secondary explorations, great. But like this is just kind of like an idea of like, hey, these things could look this way, and like here's like a way to lay these out. And then if you all want to like look at these and be like, well, that's nice, but I want some practice wireframing. Let's wireframe together because this is a part of the development process and I haven't done it. Like go ahead and do that and like wireframe it to look how you want it to look, and then see if you can implement that. Totally up to you, but that's more meant to be a guide and give ideas, but not be we're not going to be like looking for this as part of the requirements. Questions on this part? Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, I already mentioned this, like I want like you can kind of build this how you want to, right? Like we're not telling you like, hey, it's a little less like, hey, this is first, then this is second, this is third. It's like y'all are gonna need to like split this up how you see fit, and you're gonna have to prioritize how you see fit. So I just want to like emphasize that card prioritization and like getting idea of how you will start tackling stories and which stories you will start tackling first is part of this planning process. And in the past, we've like required you all to like submit an explanation for that prioritization at the end of the day. In the in the spirit of this being more of a mod of like relying on one another and being accountable to yourself. I'm not going to require you to submit something like a deliverable to us. I am going to ask that you do that as part of the planning process, and that is all. Cool. What else? Okay, so yeah, PR templates. So we're going to ask that you implement a PR template in this project. So it's basically what a PR template is. Actually, this was one of the first things I did on my first job. Is the company I was working for, we didn't have a PR template, and I noticed that like PRs were styled and laid out in a way that was like very different depending on which developer was submitting them. And a PR template basically organizes your code of like, hey, this is what this PR does. Here are the relevant screenshots. Here's where the developer should start. And it really is just like a way to organize your PRs so that they all have the same structure. We've got a couple of templates here that I'll just drop in chat. These are some resources for y'all to explore. And what else? There's one more. Yeah, and then there's an example here that I'll give you. So the first one is kind of like, hey, like here's like an issues template and like how we do it. And then the next one is like a example PR template. Like again, this is not like going to be, we don't expect it to be exactly like this, but we expect it to work for you all, right? Like, hey, what does this do? Why, like, what kind of fixes this? Which tests should I start looking at first? Which tests should I run to ensure that this functionality is here? And then screenshots. I think like one of the things that can separate you as a developer is like, this is twofold. I think always using not just screenshots, but a screencast. Like I use Loom is this like extension that I have on Chrome, and it's like shows the functionality and like basically gives a voice to my code, right? So I can look through the code, I can talk through like why I made certain decisions as I'm commenting maybe on my own PR. So another like strategy that I always encourage students, like go review your own PR. Don't just like put up a PR and be like, whoop, I'm done. Now it's my teammate's job to go review all my code. It's like, nah, that's not a great practice. If you review your code first, you'll catch your own bugs. You'll start the conversation, which makes it easier to have conversation about code right there on the PR. And you'll kind of like be showing off your good habits and attention to detail in that, like you go and review your own PRs. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Any questions on PR templates? Cool, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely clear what it is they're doing or how someone would coming to the thing, looking at these templates would use them, or is it just saying, okay, we're always going to begin a, a in a pull request that tries to fix a bug, but always start with the word fix, and then describe the bug, or is it like? And you said also something about organizing the pull requests,
Yeah.
but as far as I can tell, pull requests just sort of happen when they happen. How do you put them in any kind of order? That's very confusing for me.
Totally. Yeah. So glad you brought this up. So the idea of a pull request template is there's always going to be some information in any code change that we want to have, right? And so this gives us a structure of ensuring that whoever's making this change, whoever's making this PR, and like whether they're removing code or they're adding code, this is like a way for us to say like, hey, this is what this code does. Are the checks passing? Yes. Um, and then like, what kind of implementation is this? Is this brand new code? Are we fixing a bug that we found? This is like a kind of like the example here. um, and then you can also like kind of like have like a checklist of like, okay, like here are some things that like I know no matter what kind of change I'm making, I should probably do each time. So like this checklist, it's like, okay, like I didn't leave any comments in my code. This is just like for me to like go through and make sure that I'm like doing best practices. I've reviewed my code. I've like commented on this PR, like I said, like reviewing my own code, starting the conversation to like explain areas that I can tell might be a little tricky or unclear. And then yes, like my code has full test coverage, and like here's the testing files that are associated with it. And then also like screenshots. I don't want you taking screenshots of like your text editor, because obviously like the PR format is really nice for like viewing code. But the the screenshots can show like, hey, this is what the web page looks like with this code, right? And you can attach screenshots to like each area of functionality that you've added. Or like I said, I think a better way is doing a quick screencast, a quick video, because then that can add your voice, and it's like you're seeing the web application like in real time, like seeing what functionality this specific change adds. So there's at the top of this, there's a link to like, hey, how do I create a template for a GitHub repo? So you can go here to kind of like see like the process for adding that. And it's like a very common thing that companies do. And the whole reason is to make sure that every PR has an explanation that is structured. That's the idea. Explain this code in a structured way that we can depend on every time. Does that help, Andrew?
I think it helps.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I also will say like, I think that this will make more sense as you make a couple PRs that have like a template that you're following. Like, okay, like I have to like fill this information out for every code change. Um, cool. What else? Any other questions about this coming up?
I have a question. I put them inside of the chat, but you can answer them, so I just voice them. Um, are we still required to test basic Rails functionality, or can we just now write validations for our models, test relationships, and then just write feature tests?
Define basic Rails functionality for me.
Like, are we still testing like CRUD? I guess like strong params, stuff like that. Stuff like to be expected when you like use Rails.
I would say what I'll say is like, anything that you build like CRUD wise, like yeah, you're gonna need to test, like, and you're gonna ensure that like that. I mean, that's kind of like a feature in itself, right? Is that like, yes, I can create, I can read, I can update, I can delete data.
Yeah.
So yes, like that should be tested. Like testing a specific strong params method in isolation, like I wouldn't expect like a controller test that like just checks that like the strong params are working. I wouldn't expect. What I'll have you do is like let simplecov be your guide in terms of like, hey, is my application completely tested? Like if I run my models folder, are these unit tests kind of like completely covering my models? If I run my features folder, is everything covered in there? And I would let that be the guide. But yeah, I mean, we expect 100% test coverage on everything you build. But like, I don't know. I guess I don't think of like any. I don't want you to test that like an active record update like works, but I need you to test if you're using an active record update in a like method that you've defined, then I need you to hit that method and ensure that the output is what you expect.
Yeah, that's chill. I'll get 100%. Don't worry. Don't worry about me, Tim.
That's what I want to hear. All right, cool. Other stuff coming up at this point? Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back at 30. All right, it's 30, so I'm gonna start talking again, but we're almost through it. Yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is Travis CI, which is going to be a new tool for you, and what I have seen, at least in the past, a struggle point in the beginning, just because you have to completely configure this new tool on your own, simply looking at the docs and without much guidance from us. So a couple of just suggestions. I think this is a good thing for you all to spike on your own first, and then maybe like come together as pairs and like talk about like, hey, where are we fuzzy? Where can we maybe help one another based on what we just read? And even maybe a good place for you all to say like, all right, hey, we're going to work as maybe like not just a project pair on this. We all have to like do this, but maybe we'll work as a cohort on this and be great resources for one another in how we go about the Travis CI implementation process, the debugging process, making sure that it like is actually running the way that we want it to, and then connecting it to Heroku and make sure it's deploying the way that we want it to. There's a lot of steps involved. So I'll say that this chore is going to take some time. And so I just want to like set that expectation. This is, you kind of have this like project board card to go about like getting started. The thing to remember about Travis CI is it's going to be like its own environment. All right, so it's a tool that requires like its own environment setup, and what it does initially, like what Travis does, is every time you deploy some code to GitHub, it kicks off a new run in your Travis environment that runs your tests against whatever the new code is that was pushed, and ensures that like, hey, yes, all of these tests still run. Okay, green light. And then if that's the case, then you can also hook it up to Heroku so that it takes care of your deployments too. So you don't have to manually run like, I think it's like git push Heroku main, whatever it is, every single time. And like Travis takes care of that step for you now, as long as your specific Travis implementation passes all the checks that you've put in place, which in general, I would say is just that your tests run and are green. So things to think about though with that is that like we're going to be working with external APIs here, and this specific external API is going to require an API key. Travis is a separate environment from what you have set up in your test environment, your development environment, your production environment. Those are all different, and so is Travis, is his own environment. And so for those environments to run properly, each of them needs to know about your API keys when each of those environments attempts to go out and fetch data from that API. All right, so that's a lot of words, but maybe like rewatch this video on 1.5x speed, just this point, when you're setting up Travis CI. All right, any questions on this coming up right now? Yeah, Diana, go ahead.
I have a quick one about Travis CI. I see on the card there that it says .org. But I know there's also a .com. Is there a preference? Does it matter at this point?
That's a good question. To be honest, I don't know. So let's look. I want to say maybe the .org is like free, and
Okay.
then maybe the okay, good. Please be aware, TravisCI.org is going to shut down in several weeks. All accounts migrating here. Fun. This is the software world, right? It's forever changing, and we're forever needing to make updates. Here's what I'll say. I wish that there was more information about this. TBD.
Okay.
Let me do a little more research on this and see like what I think is the best way to go about this. I'm thinking just out loud here that likely the best way to go about this is going to be use.com, and just don't like get yourself into this like whatever is going to happen with .org and those accounts. I would maybe just go straight to .com,
Okay.
but I'm also going to like do a little more digging on this and give y'all an update.
Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, essentially, we don't want you to like put down a credit card for anything. So that's why I'm going to go and make sure that that's not part of this process. Cool. Yeah, I need to share these resources with you. I'm also just going to like drop them. I'm going to drop them all in chat, but then I'll drop them in the code help channel too. That one. So that's like a getting started, like configuring your environment. Link to the a tutorial there with some examples, and then this next one is like, hey, now this is how you're gonna like configure this thing to work with Heroku as well. So this is like kind of sequential. Like first you would do like setup, make sure that it's connected to GitHub and like running correctly, and then I would say you'd be like, okay, like now I want to hook this up to my production application on Heroku that already exists, right? Like I already have pushed Heroku once. I already like, have that process of deploying to Heroku has worked and is up and is live. And like what I've seen students get into trouble in the past is like they have errors in Heroku and they're like, oh, I'm not going to address those just yet. I'm going to try and set up Travis CI. And then it's like, well, you got errors. You're putting the cart before the horse here. And that's not going to work. So it's very much like make sure Heroku you can deploy to it manually. Then you would want to go see if you can get Travis hooked up to it. Okay. I think that's it for Travis. What else do I want to say? Why did they log me out? Yeah, I wanted to look at the calendar real quick. Just a heads up. So there aren't any check-ins this week, and that is like our bad, honestly. I think that the calendar I cloned, like there's a holiday, and so we didn't have our first check-in until like this week. But you're gonna have 2 check-ins. Probably this will either be on this Monday check-in, will either be here and be your last check-in, or it will be on this Tuesday and be in your last check-in. I'm not sure yet. Meg and I are gonna have to talk about that, but we'll have a check-in with you either sorry, just gonna get this out of here. Either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure yet. We got to figure that out. But know that there's a check-in, like a project check-in coming this week. What else? Yeah, there's this like peer code share event that we're gonna do. When is that? Yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, this is like a good chance for you all to like basically wherever you're at on the project on that Monday, we're gonna pair you guys up, pair you all up, and give you a chance to kind of like practice presenting your code on a specific piece of your code, because that's what you're going to do basically every project eval from here on out. And so you're going to get a chance to see different teams' code. You're going to get a chance to like get some feedback on your code, practice giving some feedback. So know that that's coming as kind of like another strategy for you all to like get some feedback on your code during this project. And I think that's it. The database design workshop, I'll just kind of like talk a little bit more about once we kick it off. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, so other questions coming up right now. All right, so I've thrown a lot at you in just 40 minutes. I'm sure you've got some ideas of where you want to like start reading and start diving into this project. And that's going to be different for a lot of you. So you get this time back. We're going to take an hour and 10 minutes. So I want to come back at 2:50 Mountain Time. So 10 minutes before this database planning workshop kicks off. Let's plan to like just meet back together in my room, where I'm gonna answer questions, and as long as we have them that have come up as you've done this self-discovery. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to like give you your project pairs, give you a chance to like jump into this database design portion, and then I will also walk you through how we're going to do conveyor belt and how you're going to like clone this project board into your account and what that looks like. All right. With that, see you back at 2:50 Mountain Time.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.